The Democrat National Convention was held in Chicago. I think just about everybody knows that. It was similar to the Republican National Convention just a month earlier in Milwaukee. My opinion, a total waste of time and space. As before, most of the TV networks aired it every night for a week. If political junkies like me don't care to watch it, how can they expect most of America to watch this boring trash? I do have some reactions, of course. If the conventions are to continue to be aired, at least have some suspense. Don't name who the candidate is until the third day, or at least don't name the vice president. Come on, folks, give us something new. What we saw are a bunch of has-beens throwing trash at the other party. A good example is Biden speaking well after prime time had ended on Monday night. Why bother? Who cares? Who listened? The reports are that the DNC had 20 million on Monday night and the RNC only had 18 million on its Monday night. For the RNC, the peak was Thursday night with about 25 million for Trump's speech. All I can say is there must be a lot of people up there hard up for entertainment to tune this in. I have to question these numbers. I did some research as part of this article to try and see how they decide that there were 20 million or 25 million. And I'm not sure that that represents a number that people actually sat there and watched this boring nonsense for hours on end. I have a feeling that the Nielsen ratings and the things that capture people tuning to a particular station, there's a certain time period and then it said, oh, well, they watched that. But I don't think anybody in America is bored enough to sit there and watch this stuff for 3 or 4 hours at a time. And for instance, in my own case, I did get a chance to flip channels around. I was looking for a channel that didn't have the convention on it. And so if someone was monitoring my TV, they might say, yes, you were on the NBC chapter and the channel and the CBS channel and so forth, but that doesn't mean I actually sat there and watched this stuff. But getting back to the content, what little there was, perhaps my favorite piece from the DNC was Vermont Senators Bernie Sanders, as I refer to him, Bernie the Bump. What a piece of work. He complained about how bad things were for working people, high prices and high rents. I think the old bum missed the part about his party has been in power for the last 3.5 years. Right, inflation due to the unrestrained government spending under the Biden-Harris program has ripped the poor and middle class. Now, he's an avowed socialist, but he does not ever explain why the socialist Marxist utopia he promises has people in Venezuela flooding into the US rather than the other direction. Yeah, Bernie, explain that one. In a true bit of irony, the Dems are complaining about Trump launching personal attacks at Harris, but then spent much of their convention making personal attacks on Trump. Why? Since their policies have failed so dramatically, there's not much else they can do, folks. The real story lately has been what some pundits have labeled the basement strategy 2.0. This is by the Harris administration. Recall that a shaky Biden was hidden by his staff for most of the 2020 campaign. Parallel to that, there are still no interviews with Queen Kamala the Incompetent. A month after the Paris coup, we still don't know what her positions are from her own mouth. Of course, her campaign has been covering things up based on her prior very, very far left positions. She did manage to give a speech, however, recently that bodes well for the Trump campaign. She came out and accused the producers of price gouging. No evidence, just a wild accusation. I'm sure her sycophant followers will suck that up. Naturally, there are a few problems with this silly claim. First, the producers cannot sell their products if they charge more to the next competitor. So prices do tend to reflect the actual cost. Producer prices have surged under the Biden-Harris administration due to inflation. Second, inflation in producer prices has in turn caused retail prices to be very high. And yet, maybe Harris should try to focus on the facts. Kroger's margin has actually dropped during the Biden-Harris administration from about 1.6% to about 1.4%. Kroger appears to be trying to help their consumers and remain competitive. Do you think we need to have price controls and accuse them of price gouging? Gosh, I think that margin kind of argues a different story. Third, the Harris solution in her one big speech was price controls and rent controls. Interestingly, it was a Republican administration that tried this and failed. Right, the Nixon administration in the 1970s. It was an utter failure. In fact, one of the reasons that the original big Marxist experiment, the USSR, failed was that production and price controls dictated by the government do not ever work. Price controls produce product shortages, not better consumer prices. In turn, rent controls reduce the availability of housing. So right now, America is facing a true shortage of housing. What causes? Well, part of the problem is the sheer cost of materials impacted by the Biden-Harris inflation. And due to that inflation, the Fed raised benchmark interest rates in order to control inflation, which in turn caused mortgage rates to triple. In other words, Harris is complaining about problems that her own administration created. In the meantime, Tim Walz, her VP candidate, has his own problems. A list of 50 GOP lawmakers who served in the military have signed a document citing egregious misrepresentations by Walz about his time in the Army National Guard. His claims have been labeled stolen valor. The fact that Minneapolis burned during his time as Minnesota's governor does not help his case either. I have previously said that his appointment to the VP slot is yet another gift to the Trump campaign from the Biden-Harris operation. I love the fact that Pennsylvania Governor Shapiro has now come out and said that the failure of Harris to name him as her VP candidate had nothing to do with him being Jewish. Hey, if you buy that, I have a bridge in Brooklyn that I'd like to sell you. This is Dr. David D. Shine for Saving America. Please subscribe on your favorite platform.